In this first video of today's notes, we are going to be looking at solving matrix equations that do not require inverses. And then the second part, which will be in another video, we will talk about how to find inverses so that in the future we will be able to solve matrix equations that require them. So here we're just going to look at a few equations. So we're going to start off with this matrix equation. There's a few ways that you can approach this. You can make it into a bunch of separate equations, or if you realize what's really happening here is that the entire thing is being multiplied by 7, so to undo that you could divide by 7. You really wouldn't have to set up separate equations for this. I'm going to, just to show you that option, so you can do 7x equals 21, 7y equals negative 14, and 7z equals 28, writing your final answer in the matrix format at the end. Whenever you solve a matrix equation, you want to write your final answer in matrix form, unless you're using matrices to solve a different type of equation. We can do kind of the same thing with just a regular adding equation. So in this type of equation, we, again, could make 3 separate equations, but really all you're going to be doing is subtracting that matrix from the other one. So another option would just be to show the subtraction. And remember, my recommendation for subtraction would be to distribute the negative sign and change all of your signs. So that's another option, and this would be also showing your work for this. So we'll get a final answer of negative 7, 7, and negative 8. And then if we have multiple operations, again, we can do something kind of similar to that. I'm actually going to switch out the big matrix for something smaller to make it a little easier to work with. So here we can kind of take the same technique. The matrix here is a little bigger, it's a 2 by 2. So first thing I might show is the subtraction. Again, making sure to switch all of the signs. And obviously you could do some of this stuff in your head, but you have to be very careful not to make small math errors because you are subtracting with negatives and things like that. So in the meantime, rather than calling it A, B, C, D, I can put that back at the end. I'm going to put M in for matrix just to save myself some writing. Just kidding. And then really at this point, you can divide by 2. You could also look at it as multiplying by 1/2. So not really needing to set it to 4 different equations. You can, but I think you can work with it within the matrix. So at this point, we're just dividing everything by 2. And that will give you your final answer. Now my question for you is this. How do we solve the following equation? There's no such thing as dividing matrices. So when we get to solving something like this, as opposed to some of the simple ones we just looked at, it's going to get a little more complicated. We need something called an inverse. So the rest of your notes in the next video, we'll take a look at how to find an inverse so that we will then be able to solve an equation that looks like this.